What is up, everybody? Thanks for checking in today. We're going to build this end table. Not too tall, not too short, but it's super simple. I'm going to show you how to build this guy right now. Alrighty, assembly on this guy, fairly straightforward. There's a couple angles involved, but it's not a big deal, so don't worry about it. They're all 45s. Now, the top is, well, I'm cutting this out of a scrap piece of a project panel that I had kicking around, but the dimensions on this fit inside of a piece of a 1x12. So if you've got some scrap boards laying around, you laminate them together, or you've got a 1x12 kicking around, cut off a chunk of it, it'll fit out of that. You could even make it out of plywood if you wanted to, and just band the edges of it. You'd never know the difference anyway. But this can be cut out of a 1x12. Now, I'm making mine 20 inches across the front of it. Now, I came up with that measurement solely because I need a large enough platform on top to put a flower pot, because that's what ours is going to be used for. You can make this about as big or as small as you want. Keep in mind that the larger you make it, the further intrusive, or the further out it comes from the wall, the more intrusive it becomes into the room. So because it's a corner table, it's meant to kind of stick out in this, or stick into the corner and kind of be hidden. But so the top on this guy, like I said, 20 inches across. Now from there, what I did was I took and measured into my centers. Now that's 10 inches. I made a mark on both ends, struck the line, and from there I took my framing square and I held it at each point, and I made sure the tip was in line with my line, and I just drew my angles. And I cut this out on my miter saw. Now again, it's just 45-degree cuts. You can cut this out however you want, with a jigsaw, with a circular saw, whatever you've got. Really simple. From there, I have 3 2x2s. Now, I cut these at 26¼ inches. I gang cut them all at once. Now that's just going to give me a 27-inch table overall. Not too short, not too high. But if you want to adjust the height of it, it's as simple as adjusting the length of the 2x2s. You can leave everything else the same, so that is awesome. Now, in order to measure for my stretchers or my apron or whatever you want to call it, what I did is I took my combination square. From there, I set it at 1/2 inch, and I went around the table and I placed all the legs, and then I made sure that each one of the legs was inset 1/2 inch in every direction. Then I left them there, and I just took my tape measure and I measured in between each one, found out my lengths, and I cut them. Simple as that. Now they are nothing more than 1x3. So if you've got some 1x3 kicking around, or like I said, 1x6 or whatever have you can cut it down on a table saw if you've got it, but it is 1x3 in dimension. Now the legs and the aprons are going to be assembled using pocket hole joinery. So I've gone ahead and I've drilled my 3/4 inch pocket holes already. Now because 2 of my apron pieces have a 45-degree bevel cut into them, had I left my pocket hole jig set up normally at 3/4 inch depth for 3/4 inch stock or 1x stock, it would have come out too shallow. So I cut a test piece and I just did a few different depth settings. I was playing around with it, trying to figure out my depth. And what I actually found that worked was, I'm still using the 1¼ inch screws for it. But what I did was I actually raised the depth guide on the jig itself to 1 inch, but I kept the collar depth on the bit set at the 3/4 inch depth before. And with the 1¼ inch screws, that gives me plenty of meat to hug into the 2x2, but it's not going to blow out the other side of the 2x2. So just make sure you make that adjustment when you're drilling the 45 degrees corners. And then assembly is fairly straightforward. Just go ahead and give everything a preliminary sanding first, get everything nice and smooth. While it's all blown apart, it'll be far simpler. And then after that, I've got some 1/4 inch plywood scraps that I've just cut apart. Now these are going to act as spacers. It's going to pick up my apron pieces just 1/4 inch before I screw them into my 2x2s for my legs. Now, if you want to mount them flat, you absolutely can. I'm just mounting them back, or recessing them, or raising them, or whatever you want to call it. I'm just giving myself a 1/4 inch shadow line just to give it a little bit of interest on an otherwise fairly simple piece. So, a little bit of glue and screws, get the frame assembled. All right, now that I got the frame assembled, I've cut out a second copy, I guess, to the top. Now this is just the remainder of the board. I cut one triangle, I cut a second triangle out, nothing more than that. Now, I plan on putting just a small little shelf on here, and that's what this is going to be. So in order to get the dimensions for the shelf, because I want it to fit inside of the legs, it's not going to be very big. What I'm going to do is slide it forward so that the skirting is flush with the front of the top, or I guess the shelf in this case. And then I'm just going to take and mark a line where my ply, or where my board and my skirting meets up. Then I'll just take and cut that out. And now back at the table, I'm just going to take and set it on top, square it up, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil, I'm just going to mark where the frame is on the inside. And just extend my lines and then cut them out with a jigsaw. Voila. So this one was a really easy project. Couple things I did to note too. I took my 1/8 inch roundover bit in my router and I ran it all along the top, and I took a 45-degree chamfer and I ran it all along the bottom. From there I just took some hand sanding and I softened the edges of the top, and I softened the hard edges on the shelf and on the skirting and stuff like that just by hand, and 220 grit sandpaper, nothing crazy. One thing you may have noticed in a previous scene here was on the back side, on the skirting, I actually took my brad nailer and I ran 3 brads into these skirting pieces first, just 1.25 brads, and I ran them straight in. The reason I did that was it just held these in place a lot more sturdy, and then I ended up running the screws in afterwards. The screws kept wanting to obviously pull everything apart, and I didn't want that, so I ran in the brads first and then I ran the screws in afterwards from the bottom side. It is a tight squeeze. You may need one of the 45-degree tools, but you can get in there. But yeah, other than that, guy, that's the end of that one. Like I said, there's tons of modifications you can make. You can make it taller, you can make it wider, you can make it longer. It's entirely up to you. But yeah, hope you guys learned something on this one. If you did, let me know down in the comments below. Subscribe, like, would go a huge way. So if you do that, thank you very much. And we'll see you guys in the next one.